Hey everyone, Xant again. So, like I said in my last video, I wanted to talk about my thoughts about Elune after about a week of playing it. Think of this like a delayed impressions video. Now, so we're on the same page, this isn't going to be me just talking positively about Elune. There are some gripes that I have with it. But, start off, let's hit the positive notes, the things that I like about the game. So, first off, I really like how Elune handles units. You're able to gacha them, you can fuse them, so there exists a way for the whale and the free-to-play respectively. Actually, you might notice I now have a Freya on my team. I fused a couple legendaries I wasn't going to use, and she popped out at 6 stars. Excellent timing, I was trying to replace my healer since launch like I said. Now, the fusion system means that no unit goes to waste, so even those trash minimum rolls with one epic means you have fodder to do a free gacha again. Granted, nobody wants a minimum roll like that, but it will happen, and at least there's a way to redeem it. I do wish the cap for a guaranteed tier up was lowered, but it is what it is. I'm also really happy that the early progression is easy. The game doesn't stonewall you out of the gate with a stupidly hard grind, and you can easily get a power spike with minimal effort. I think the lack of a gear gacha is also a good choice, as otherwise there'd be more than just the transcension gap between whales and everybody else. Elune is also generous with their epic and legendary freebies. Light summons, login rewards, clear rewards, air tokens, there's tons of ways to get your mitts on more units. Of course, the downside to these is that they're not going to be a very high rarity, but that's what seeds are for, right? On that note, the materials needed to improve your characters are relatively easy to obtain. Not that you'll need to worry about seeds though, as once a couple of weeks have passed and your team is stabilized and you've cleared the temple enough times to get to hard mode for the quests, you'll be getting 2 to 3 of each seed type a week at minimum. You just stockpile for a month, you don't roll any new units, and you'll see those numbers start to rise. Elune is also super casual with the repeat feature, and that lets you step away from the game, albeit with the right settings, and you can come back later to an empty Aeon bar and tons of items. It's really nice for people who are just too busy to sit down and dedicate a lot of time to a game. PvP, though obviously skewed towards the whales being much stronger, doesn't feel terribly configured. Usually, of the 3 people I get matched against, I can beat 2 of them, and I can get silver without using rubies. Of course, I'm not going to be breaking any records, but it's comfy, and a nice way to grind more epic units through the Valor shop. Events also seem easy enough to participate in, if we use the summer event as a baseline. You just do what you normally do, and you get the event currency to exchange for items. It has a very low barrier of entry, and it's very straightforward. Finally, the daily content after reset is really easy to clear. You don't need to commit much brainpower to clear it all, and you get your daily items and finish your missions. It's nice. But in contrast to all those positives, there are also negatives to the game. So first off, rubies. They're a pretty important resource in Elune, from being used in the gacha, to buying more Aeon, to buying supply items, increasing your storage capabilities, all sorts of things. With this in mind, I consider rubies the catch-all currency for the game. Gold is just a burner for the Alliance donations, zodiac signs, and the negligible amounts that you need to scrap and upgrade things. The problem is, once you've cleared the story content and the recurring missions, your primary source of ruby income is going to be the weekly and daily missions, and constantly farming the affinity missions every time they come up. Now, thinking about repeatables, one thing I hate saying about a game is how it feels like a chore. The problem is, that's what Elune is starting to feel like. Reset hits, farm your dailies. Chaos Tower, Air Battle, Temple Rift, the Boss Gauntlet. You can't skip them, or I miss the 20 daily mission gem reward. Affinity missions reset, start farming those on repeat, but you have to keep an eye on it, because pirates will show up, and you can't miss the skill pages or you're just going to gimp yourself. So if you haven't caught on, my main gripe here is that the game feels draining to play, at least to me. There's too much to do at reset, to the point where I'm spending almost an hour when the reset hits just cleaning up the queue. Then, I check back every 8 hours to the next affinity cycle, and sometimes check in to refresh the air battles and do those. It's not hard to do, it's just time consuming. Of course, you could say, why not just split it up, do some now and some later? Or just don't do the affinity missions? Well, for one, I don't really have that much time to dedicate to Elune. Second, missing out on doing the affinity missions is another way to impede your growth. You'll miss out on the tree rewards, which arguably aren't that big a deal, but the ruby reward payout you get for completion, that's the problem. I have to ask though, why didn't they just implement a daily limit for some of these things so players don't constantly feel like they're screwing themselves over by not playing because they're busy? Anyways, the grand scheme of things, although there's a lot to do, I think there's too much to do come reset. I can't think of any other mobile game I've played where it takes me an hour to finish my daily quests. Even Girls Frontline only takes like 20 minutes tops, and that's including grinding event currency and combat simulator and everything. Another gripe in this vein is the repeat system. They included this handy way to let you use your Aeon while you sleep, clean, cook, whatever other tasks you want, so you can progress without needing to spend time babysitting the game. The only problem is that you have to babysit it, or you're missing out on pirates, and with their drops being integral to progression, skipping them isn't advised at all. Now, something recent that got added during the summer update was themed costumes. Thing is, you can only purchase them with real money. Now, I may have been spoiled by other games, but to not include a way for free-to-play players to obtain these is kind of blech. Make them cost rubies or something, and then offer an alternative real money pack in the shop that has extra things in it. But just locking costumes behind a paywall? Ugh. To top it off, you may have noticed all costumes say no effect on them. Does this mean they already plan on adding costumes with stat modifiers or something? Will they be real money only as well? On the other hand, it could just be visual effects. Regardless, real money only costume locks just don't look good. Now, there do exist a couple of lunar costumes for some of the characters, but they're not mentioned anywhere, and the buy button's actually in Korean. So, something tells me that we weren't meant to see this or have the actual costumes available to us. So, after all that, my last real complaint is the way progression works. Now, you may think, but you said it was easy, and I did. But that's only for the early game. The way Elune handles progression feels very skewed. I guess I'd argue it feels very, very front-loaded. You might want to tell me every game is like that though. Early on you get massive leaps in your abilities, and then stagnate when the grind kicks in. Problem is, Elune has that stagnation kick in rapidly once your team stabilizes. The tail end of the game, so to speak, feels wholly empty and lackluster compared to the shiny front that it offers. There's no more advancement to your characters other than transcending them in skill books. Those evolution materials you farm, they're pretty much useless now, since you'll most likely fuse a 6-star of the unit you want before you end up catching them. Now, I guess of course you can use those seeds on transcending copies of units, but personally it just doesn't feel the same as evolving a unit that you're going to use, you know? For me, there's no drive to do anything other than wait for the boss challenges to refresh to grind more gear, or blow rubies to skip the timer. You might want to go hunting for that one optimal unit for your composition, but frankly, it feels like an unsatisfying core game loop. Elune has already reached that feeling of being nothing more than a daily chore in around a week. One where I see it and think, time to get comfy, I'm gonna be here for a while. I did mention the summer event was nice and simple, which is true. Except, it just takes the grind and tacks on some extra item rewards to what you'd normally do anyways. In a sense, it added nothing more than an arbitrary reward tree. If future events are like this, well, what's the point? There's no changes, the grind is the same. So, to sum up everything negative, the core gameplay loop feels bland, the repeat system requires you to babysit the game where you're crippling your progression, the game feels like a chore due to the daily reset content and everything that comes along in a day of play, and finally, the amount of grind required to progress doesn't feel like it's worth doing for the payout. Now, with all that out of me, I do want to clarify, I don't think Elune is a bad game. It's just bad for me in its current state. The combat is fun, and the graphics are nice for a mobile game. But there are too many things that just grind my gears in a bad way. But don't let my opinion make you drop it if you're enjoying yourself. I just wanted to communicate my gripes about the game, because I feel like being honest about my impressions of the games I play and talk about is important. You might think I was overly harsh, considering my negative views were the majority of the video, but that's because I expanded on why I thought they were valid negatives, while leaving the positives more or less unexplained. Anyways, with that, I'll wrap up the video. I'll still be playing Elune. Who knows, they might implement a patch that changes my tune. But if it stays as it is, I can't justify spending 50% of my free time or more playing it, and leaving the rest for all the other things that I want to do. Anyhow, peace, I'll see you in the next video.